here for you all. So, hi everyone, welcome in. Thanks for spending your morning with us. Welcome to Conflict Management, Fierce and Crucial Conversations. Today is sponsored by the Central Valley Regional HR Hotline. My name is Anna Manzano. I'm the digital media and event strategist here at the California Employers Association. Before we get into today's webinar officially, I have just a couple details to go over with you. So as you see, your audio is going to be muted for today's presentation, but as you are already doing so in the chat so wonderfully, there is going to be lots of opportunities to engage during today's session, and we really encourage that engagement. So if you have any questions pertaining to the presentation, you can type them into the Q&A box at any time, and we will try to address them as we go. We really encourage a lot of dialogue with trainings like this. If you do have specific employee issues, though, we really do encourage you to reach out to an attorney directly. We have some great legal partners on our CEA website that we can, hopefully point in your direction for anything specific that you might need some help with, or reach out to your HR hotline and we can do so there. Handouts for this training, those were sent out in yesterday's reminder email. However, I know we had a couple last minute registrations and some bounce back. So I'm going to go ahead and put the PDF into the chat box in just a minute here. So once you see the icon pop up, click on it. It'll download locally to your drive. If you have any issues, just go ahead and ping me in the chat and I'll make sure I get those to you one way or another. No fear. And then last but not least, we do have a survey. So because your feedback is so important to us here at CEA, we have a very quick survey. It takes less than a minute. It's only 5 questions, but the feedback that you share with us, we really do take to heart, and we share with our partners over at the Central Valley HR Hotline, just to make sure that we are meeting and hopefully exceeding your expectations with resources and trainings like this. So if you could take the minute at the end, you'll see a QR code pop up, as well as I'll put a hyperlink into the chat, and we would really appreciate your participation there. Now the housekeeping's done. So I have the great privilege of introducing our trainers today. We have Eli Nunez, who is one of our amazing HR directors who you may have spoken to if you called into the HR hotline. He'll be delivering today's content. And we have the lovely Jessica Rivera, who is our training and coaching director, who will be managing the Q&A box for you today. So you are in great hands. And Eli, I know we have so much to cover, so it is all yours.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for that great introduction. We'll try to live up to your your description of us here. Before we start, I'd like to thank the Central Valley Hotline and all the counties that got together to help put this on for you, and also to remind everybody that they do also provide an HR hotline for you that's free of charge. So if you're in any of these counties listed there on the right-hand side of the slide, and you have any questions about any HR related topic, whether it's leaves of absence, paid sick leave, breaks and meal periods. Believe it or not, we still got a lot of questions about that because it can be a little tricky sometimes. Handbook questions, policies, harassment, remote workers, whatever it is. If you have any HR related questions for us, please call the right hotline, give us a call. We're here to talk to you 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, except for holidays, of course. We can help you with any of those HR topics. We know they're tough, they can be tricky sometimes, and sometimes you just need someone to bounce something off of, right? Just to talk it out, talk it through, and get to the right answer to stay out of trouble. So that's what we're here for. We'd love to hear from you. A little bit more about us. We are California Employers Association, and our goal is to provide our callers and our members with peace of mind. So to do this, we provide trainings and webinars such as this. We also provide phone support as through those hotlines or for our members. So you can call us and we'll provide you information, knowledge, anything that you can find. So again, we're as responsive as possible. We try to get back to our callers within an hour. Usually doesn't even take that long. We also provide forms, fact sheets, that sort of thing, both for members and even for non-members. So if you're not a member, don't worry. Go to employers.org, take a look, and take advantage of some of those great resources there. One thing I would like to point out, though, is that even though there are people on our team with legal experience, and a lot of the things we talk about are related to California law, employment law, that sort of thing, we are not attorneys, and this presentation or anything we discuss over the phone should not be taken as legal advice. We do recommend, if you have any questions of a legal nature or legal importance, to consult with your legal counsel. Many benefits to that, of course. You have attorney-client privilege, among other things. So just a reminder again, this is the fine print portion of the presentation, if you will. We are not attorneys. This is not legal advice or to be taken as legal advice. This presentation is purely for educational purposes. Having said that, let's jump right into what we're going to be talking about today. So some of the topics we're going to talk about in this presentation are conflict, of course, right? Conflict resolution. We're going to define conflict in the workplace, some of the causes of it, the origins of it, how to deal with it, and what the repercussions of that could be. We're going to look at different styles of conflict resolution. Just like people are different, we all have different approaches to solving things and resolving conflicts. So we'll look at those different styles, when they come into play, when they're advantageous, and when maybe they're not so advantageous for us. Talk about some tools to manage and resolve those conflicts, of course. I'm guessing the reason a lot of you are here, we know conflict is out there. How do we navigate it? How do we solve it? And of course, how do we navigate those crucial conversations? Anyone that's in a management position, or even if not, anyone in the workplace, we know that we have these conversations that are of great importance to many parties. So it's important to prepare for them and make sure that we're navigating them correctly. So before we jump into the meat of this presentation, we have a little poll here. Basically, I'd like to know how you all feel about conflict at work. So if I could ask Jessica, launch that for me, please, and we'll talk about, give us a little idea of how you feel about conflict at work. Do you avoid it at all costs? Are you comfortable, but you feel you're not prepared for it? Or uncomfortable, sorry, not prepared? Do you address it as quickly as you can to avoid issues to escalate? Or are you an optimist? Cups half full. We see it as an opportunity to find solutions. We look forward to it. So, or other, if your feelings about it are quite different, let us know. So, see, I always love watching these polls. It's kind of like watching that little racehorse game at the fair, watching the lines move, see where everybody's at. All right, give you guys just a few more moments to put your opinions out there. All right. Looks like we're slowing down a little bit right now. And it looks like, the majority of you like to address that conflict as quickly as possible to avoid any escalation of issues, which is always a great approach, right? We know that things that we avoid or we leave festering under the surface can cause a lot of problems in the workplace. Others see it as an opportunity to find solutions. Again, very great approach. There's a few that avoid it at all costs, or some that are uncomfortable with it and not prepared. And that's natural, right? I mean, we are not always ready for conflict, so it makes us uncomfortable, just out of human nature, right? So thank you very much for sharing, so we kind of know where everybody is at right now. Let's go ahead and move on with the presentation here. And the first thing we want to do is defining conflict. How do we define conflict? So, you know, give you guys about 30 seconds, kind of think about it and throw some ideas in the chat. What comes to mind when you hear the word conflict or conflict at work? Not looking for a thesis or a full paper or anything, just a word or two that pop into mind when you hear or to define conflict in the workplace. Okay. So a few things that are coming in: arguments, your staff doesn't get along, fights, opposing viewpoints, disagreements. Yep. Differences of opinions. Very true. Disagreements, misunderstandings, yeah, a lot of things. I mean, of course, unsatisfied. I saw something out there, problems in the workplace. Absolutely. Gossip and frustration, of course. Absolutely. Drama. Yep. Tension. A lot of good answer, a lot of good things that we've seen, right? It lets us know that we've all kind of experienced that in the workplace, kind of have had to deal with it in one way or another, either at work or in our personal lives, at home, at school, whatever it is. So absolutely. Yep. Last one. Drama and stress. Yep. Ooh, that's a good one too. Resistance to change. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for those. Yeah, those are all very great examples of conflict, defined conflict in the workplace. And of course, we have the old Webster's dictionary definition of conflict as well. So if you want the official definition we found was a fight, a battle, a war, an armed conflict, competitive or opposing action of incompatibles. That's usually, what a lot of us think about when we hear about conflict, right? Two opposing sides, opposing viewpoints, just people that, or ideas that can't get along, that are clashing. But here's the second one, which I think some of you, might agree with, seeing those original poll results that we saw. And that's an opportunity to engage in conversation with someone with a different viewpoint. So that's when we recognize maybe that, hey, there's a difference here, there's a difference of opinions, different of ideas, but this is a good chance for us um, to kind of explore those differences, and you know come up with a good solution for that thing, right? So I mean, it's natural for us to feel negative about conflict because, maybe we've had bad experiences in the past, or we come from an environment, whether it's a previous job or work or home or whatever it is, that had a lot of conflict. So we grew up with that idea that, hey, we're constantly dealing with it. We don't want to deal with it anymore. We want to avoid it. So again, that avoidance or how we approach it, it's not necessarily wrong. It's just a reflection of we you know what the experiences that we've had. So, and of course, the big question is, why do we fall into conflict? What happens? How do we fall into conflict in the workplace? Why does it come up? And the reason is, of course, there could be many different things that cause it, just as different as we all are in the workplace, right? Again, those different ideas, or maybe, if you're trying to collaborate at work and someone's unresponsive or someone takes longer than you're used to respond to something, that could lead to conflict, right? Or maybe the way we speak to each other. If people have different ways of speaking, someone's much more direct, whereas someone else tends to be a little bit more I don't know, more reserved perhaps, that can cause some conflict in the workplace. And the thing to keep in mind again, is conflict, it's could be natural. Anytime you have people involved, you have difference of opinions, but it becomes a problem at work or an issue because it could lead to breaking up the team, right? That toxic work environment or fracturing the team because if you have conflict constantly happening or that's not resolved, people start choosing sides, things start to happen that just really fractures that team and leads to, of course, other issues, lack of trust among team members, a lack of good communication, and ultimately is going to affect the productivity of your team or your organization. So this is why many people sometimes choose to just ignore that conflict, right? We're going to, we know there's an issue there, but we're going to kind of deal with it later. We'll brush it under the rug for now or sweep it under the rug and deal with it at a later date. But again, these things tend to fester under the surface and cause other issues. And as I think many of us have been part of bad work cultures or bad work situations where having that conflict just festering on the surface causes a lot of problems with the morale of the team and with the way things are, and it just leads to things like turnover or just lack of productivity, as I mentioned, or just people just generally being an unhappy toxic workplace. So one of the tools we can use for dealing with this though, and dealing with conflict, is what's called emotional intelligence. And what emotional intelligence is, you see a definition here on the screen for you. Basically, it's just the ability for someone to recognize and come to terms with their feelings and other people's feelings as well. So being aware of emotions, both our emotions and others' emotions, how they affect us, and the the environment around us, so to speak. So emotional intelligence is one of these things that you hear about, people's IQ perhaps, that once people there's people with higher IQs than others, and that's pretty much that. The thing about emotional intelligence, though, it can also become a skill that we can acquire. So it's not just like someone has emotional intelligence and someone doesn't, and that's just the way it is. Emotional intelligence is something that could be developed. We could learn tools, we could learn tricks for that sort of thing to kind of make sure that we're using it correctly in our workplace. And the important thing too is, making sure that when we're dealing with emotional intelligence, it's not just about recognizing our own feelings, it's recognizing the feelings of those around us, right? So it's easy to say, hey, I know how I feel about this thing. I know how I feel about this topic. I feel strongly about it. I don't, whatever it is. And, that's my opinion. I'm comfortable with it. I'm aware of it. And that's it. And that's, could be seen as a bit of a narcissistic approach, right? We have to take into account that all things at work or in our organizations do not happen in a vacuum. So we have to be aware of how things we do, our actions, conflicts and that sort of thing affect those around us as well. So there was a survey, researchers that um, ask people, how aware are you of your emotions? How self-aware are you? And the people polled, 95% claim to be self-aware. However, some more research was done, and it turns out that only about 10 to 15% of people actually fit the criteria for self-awareness. So again, a lot of times we think we recognize our emotions and how we react, but really, it's we don't always understand how our actions and our emotions affect those around us. That's very important to keep in mind. It's not just about us recognizing what's internal to us, our emotions, but again, how it affects those around us. That's why, when we talk about self-awareness, we talk about internal self-awareness, who we are on the inside, and external. And external is knowing how people see us. And that's an important skill to learn for leaders, right? Because again, we could very much internally think, hey, I know what the situation is. I know the course of action we have to take. I know what needs to be done. But we have to be aware of how these decisions or how that course of action is going to affect the rest of the team. Doesn't necessarily always mean that we're going to change the course or completely change our decision, but it could mean that it's going to have an effect on our messaging or how we deliver these things or how we get buy-in into our ideas. So again, it's not just about saying, this is what I feel, I'm the leader, this is the way it is. It's being aware of the feelings of those around us. So now, as far as using emotional intelligence on a day-to-day basis, it's about understanding how something is making us feel, but also how we react to it. So, for example, if someone makes a comment or a suggestion or does something that just doesn't feel right, rubs you the wrong way, think about what your reaction to that is. Do you, do you get offended by it and just shell up and move away from that person, or do you try to have a discussion as to what's going on? Are we empathetic towards others? Do we put ourselves in other shoes to see why they're making, you know, the decisions they're making or why they are reacting a certain way? Can we see things through other people's eyes? And again, do we take the time to process our emotions before reacting? This is important, when we're in the discussion, a crucial conversation, or in the middle of a conflict, being able to process our emotions before responding or before acting before. Because we know, I mean, if we sometimes react too soon or just, make a snap judgment or a snap reaction, it could really escalate the situation and make the issue that much worse or make it that much harder to resolve. So again, take the time, process our emotions, make sure we know how we feel, why we feel, why did this comment rub me the wrong way? Why did I take it so personally? Is there something there to it? Was it just a bad time for me? Was I stressed out about other things? Or was it truly an offensive comment that was directed at me and I should react a certain way? So again, this helps us react correctly. As a reminder, as I mentioned, I mean, sometimes the way we react to things and the way we see things is not based on the way they really are, how they were meant. It's just based on the way that we see them, on our experience, on our perceptions, right? So, and that's the reason why, you've seen where different people can witness the same thing, witness the same event, but interpret it differently. Some people say, well, this happened, these two people got in a fight, and so punched so, and that was it. While another person can say, oh, well, this person was upset because there was a discussion and, this other person walked up to him really aggressively. Is either of them wrong? Knows, but I mean, they're just interpreting it based on the way they saw things. So again, from a personal basis, it's important for us when we're processing things to be aware of our own biases. Why are we seeing things a certain way? Or be aware if we only see things one way, right? Based on our experience, based on what we've seen, based on our position at work, perhaps. It's important to make sure that we are aware of those biases and how they can affect our decisions or our perception of things. Now, as members of an organization and as leaders, it's important to keep in mind that empathy could be one of the most important skills that we can develop. And again, that's the ability to put ourselves in other people's shoes or to see things from other people's perspective, right? Forbes did there's been studies from Forbes and a few other organizations. Catalyst did a study. They surveyed almost 900 employees and found that empathy had some great effects on the workforce. The first one was innovation. If employees found that if they were able to feel that their leadership could see things their way or put themselves in their shoes, 61% of those surveyed felt that they could be more innovative or share more ideas. At the same time, 76% of people felt more engaged with their workplace if they had leaders who they perceived to be empathetic, right? And from, if you want to look at it from HR, from more numbers perspective, if you will, um, Empathetic leaders also have an effect on retention within an organization. So over 50, almost 60% of women surveyed said that they were not likely to think about leaving their companies if they felt that their their circumstances, they were respected, they were valued by their companies, that their leadership was empathetic, right? That their leadership responded to them as individuals as opposed to just seeing them as a cog in the machine. So again, being able, having your employees feel that, hey, this is a leader that understands me, that knows that maybe life happens, or tries to explore why I make decisions the way I do or do things the way I do, is a place I want to be. It's a place I want to stay, right? So again, as you can see from this quote by Forbes too, empathy is the gorilla glue that holds together our workplaces. So, having not just empathetic leaders, but empathetic co-workers, people that kind of try to put themselves in your shoes or understand, that, hey, we all have different things going on and we all see things differently. That's going to help strengthen the organization and keep it together. So let's talk a little about conflict at work and some of the types of conflict that occur, and some of the common reasons or common origins of conflict that happen, of course, are related to tasks. You have two people, working on something, and maybe it doesn't turn out the way it is. Maybe they're working at different speeds or what have you, but that could lead to conflict as well. The other one that we've identified too is resources. If do you have all the tools or all the resources necessary to complete your task? If you don't, that's going to lead to some issues. Or if you have limited resources, you have workers competing for them, that could cause an issue as well. Again, I touched on this in the first one, the work style of people that work differently, maybe put different emphasis on how they perform a task or the speed or, you know, the emphasis on things that could cause conflict as well. People's personalities. We've heard of personality conflicts, people that just don't mesh, right? People just can't get along for some reason. That can also cause issues in the workplace. Communication barriers. And we're not just talking about, different languages or that sort of thing, but think about the workplace today. A lot of us work remotely or in a hybrid environment. So it's no longer the case where we're communicating face to face all the time, where we're having those conversations in meeting rooms or anything. A lot of the conversation or the communication is done virtually, either through video, telephone, text, Slack or other instant messaging, that sort of thing. And that of course can lead to misunderstandings or the message not being as clear as we think it is. Me writing an email could think that I'm being very clear, very friendly, very concise, while the other person receives it and sees it as maybe being aggressive or being not as clear as it could be, being confusing. That can cause some conflict as well. And finally, cultural differences. That could lead to our approaches, to how we do things, how we view things. Those cultural differences can also cause conflict in the workplace as well. And it's important to recognize that conflict can happen because as an organization, as a business, it's the worst thing that can happen, of course, is unresolved conflict can lead us to lawsuits, legal actions, that sort of thing. And that's very important to keep in mind. That's why, sometimes people choose to avoid conflict. But again, it's important to deal with it to avoid these situations. So some of the things that, again, we've identified as things that can lead to conflict in the workplace is the first one we have is needs. So if an employee doesn't feel that their needs are being met or feels that their needs are being ignored, that can lead to legal action or other issues in the workplace. An example of this would be, if someone feels that they're being discriminated because of a disability or a pregnancy or anything like that, that can definitely lead to big issues for the organization. Next one we have is perception. So, is do people feel or perceive that there's inconsistency in how they're being treated? Do they view that there's favoritism or that there's a group that's being, not responded to or not addressed correctly? Power, of course. If a person tries to basically exert their power over somebody else, or even from a simpler basis, if you have a leader that is using their position to ask somebody to perform a duty, do a job, speed up, slow down, whatever it is, and that person doesn't respond well to somebody telling them what to do, to somebody exerting their power over them, that's going to cause some conflict as well. Values, you know, that's important. It's important for an organization to establish their core values and make sure that their policies, their actions, the way they handle and talk to employees are aligned with those values. Any inconsistency there is going to lead to confusion and definitely misunderstandings and conflict in the workplace. And finally, emotions. If we have different feelings over something, over a situation, over a project, over a discussion, that sort of thing, that is going to cause conflict in the workplace. And this is something, this is where good communication comes in handy, right? Being able to clearly present our ideas or our point of views to avoid any kind of confusion there. And just like there's a bad side to conflict, if it goes unresolved, it could lead to a lawsuit or any of those actions. It's important to point out that that there are some benefits to conflict or some good things that could come from it, right? And it's important to know that these benefits only come about if we handle that conflict correctly. So again, if we're able to deal with that conflict in a creative, positive way, it's going to lead to more innovation and creativity in the workplace, right? Especially if you have conflict that comes from different perspectives or different ideas, it's going to lead people to basically come up with different ways to solve those differences or solve those problems. And again, of course, the healthy conflict is going to help, us be able to discuss differences of opinions or different ideas and lead to better decisions being made. Decisions that are maybe more inclusive or take into account different things that were brought up by others in the organization. Dealing with this conflict also helps us to understand and communicate better, have that mutual understanding of all the different people in an organization. That could take into account people's different beliefs, different cultures, different backgrounds, whatever it is, but being able to discuss those things, that being able to talk through that conflict in a positive way can lead us to understand that, as well as, lead to more growth, both professionally and personally, right? I mean, it's, you come across an issue at work, you find a way to resolve it. It helps you by, having those tools or those skills for you to be able to refer to in the future. And finally, it helps us to identify any issues within the organization. If we have a problem that comes up that, we knew nothing about until it comes up, it could have been something that could have very easily gone under the radar for a long time, just kind of poisoning the environment, poisoning the workplace. But, once these organizational issues come up and we deal with them, it helps to make us stronger as an organization as well. Now, the flip side of that, of course, is always cost to those conflict. If we deal with it in a positive way, it can lead to more stress. Conflict can be stressful. Those discussions, those issues, of course, can cause, anguish, if you will, for those involved. Of course, taking time away from what we're doing to deal with that conflict is going to affect productivity overall. So it's going to have a negative effect there, as well as while we're resolving that conflict, you can have some friction between the people involved. So um, it's very important to make sure, again, it's even though there are some positives to conflict, there is always going to be a flip side to it, right? Whether it's, monetary cost, time spent, or even emotional cost to it, solving those issues. It's important to recognize that those are there, and we have to work through it in order to come up with a solution. Now, when it comes to dealing with conflict itself, there's been many studies, many books written, that sort of thing, and we came across this what's called the Thomas Kilmann model of conflict. And this was created way back in the 1974, back in the 70s, but I think it still does a good job of illustrating or taking into account the way conflict is dealt with in different situations. And I mean, this one basically takes into account people typically deal with, or behave in an uncomfortable situation. As you can see on the axis, the difference, the way we deal with it is going to be dependent on our assertiveness and our cooperativeness, our level of, how assertive we are and how cooperative. And that's going to basically define how we deal with those issues. Now, it's important to keep in mind too that some of us may default to one or more of these areas on a regular basis, but that doesn't mean that that's what we always use to deal with conflict or to deal with issues. It's going to vary based on the situation, based on how important the issue is to us, based on, different things. So again, just because, you're always or you tend to default to one of these areas doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do 100% of the time. So talk them through them one by one a little bit to give you an idea. The first one we have is avoidance. And avoidance is one of those things where we just kind of kick the can down the road, right? We don't want to deal with it right now, and we'll deal with it in the future. Let's just avoid this conflict, not talk about it right now. And that's, low assertiveness, low cooperativeness. In other words, we don't want to engage in it right now, and we just don't have the desire to deal with it. So again, this sounds negative, right? We're avoiding the problem. We don't want to deal with it. However, it can be useful if we're in a situation where we're not prepared to deal with it right now. Maybe we're in a situation where everyone's really emotionally charged. It's not a good time to deal with it because everyone's really upset about it. So maybe you put a pin in it, discuss it at a later date, right? That's important if you're going to do that, though. Don't just say, we'll deal with it later. Say, let's set up a meeting or let's revisit it in X amount of time. That way it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. All right, next one we have is accommodation. And this is one where it's, a high level of cooperativeness. So we want to be very cooperative. We want to make sure that this issue is solved, but we're not very assertive. It's just we just want to solve the problem and, get beyond it no matter what. So this could be people that, sometimes tend to fall on the sword. They'll take the hit for it just to be able to solve it. They'll give up, you know, basically give up their desire or whatever they were after just to get beyond it and to move along, right? And this could be something that an approach you take when you come up with an issue that's not really important to you, but it's very important to the other person, right? So you're gonna say, okay, you know what? That's fine. Let's do that. I'm going to punt on this one and move on. So again, something an approach that can be taken again if an issue is not very important to you but very important to the other party, this could be an approach that is taken. Next one is a highly compete. So this is when you're very, very assertive. You want to win no matter what. You're going to solve this conflict and get 110% of what you desire. And this approach is something where, the outcome is very, very critical. It's very important to you. It's very important to come up with, come with a solution that you want. So you're basically saying, it's my way or the highway. We're going to do this, and you're not going to talk me out of it no matter what. So, and this could be something where, say for instance, if you're the leader of an organization, you're the CEO, and you have to chart the path, right? It's a tough decision. It has to be made, but you believe or that's for the good of the organization. It's not up for discussion, right? It's my way or the highway. And again, I mean, this is very important if it's a very critical decision to make, but keep in mind that taking this approach can have a very detrimental effect on the relationships with those around you. They see you as someone that's always saying it's my way or the highway, only my way goes. You could be viewed as someone that's not very cooperative or someone that's not very collaborative, and ultimately someone that they may not want to work with on a long-term basis. Compromise, again, that's right in the middle. It's when we try to find the best solution for everybody, right? And again, this is something where, I know what my needs are, I know what your needs are, but you know what? I'm willing to give up a little bit of what I'm looking for if you're willing to give up a little, and we can solve this problem and move on. So again, this is some on the surface looks like a very good approach, right? And we're looking for just to compromise or both could give up a little bit and move on beyond this. But it's important to analyze the situation completely to make sure that you're not giving up too much on both sides and coming up with a half-baked solution. So again, while compromise seems like the best approach on the surface, it could be something where, it's not always the right choice for all decisions. So again, some decisions really aren't aren't always up for discussion, right? We know that if we've been leaders of organizations or have those crucial decisions to make, we know that they're not always up for discussion. So sometimes, giving up a little bit is not an option. But again, if it's what we call a moderately important goal or something that's, not extremely crucial, compromising on both parties can be a great way to move on and to solve the issue. And last one we have is the collaborative. And this is, where we collaborate to come up with a solution where it's the most beneficial for all parties, right? This seems like the winner. This seems like the one we want to go with all the time. It's the I win, you win. Everybody gets what they are looking for. And again, on the surface, this looks like the great way to approach it. However, keep in mind that collaboration takes time. It's not something that, we're going to solve over lunch or we're going to solve very quickly, especially with more difficult situations. So again, keep in mind that if it's a very very crucial decision where we really both parties just don't want to give in or can't afford to give in, take the time to collaborate to come up with the right decision. But if it's something that's not very very crucial, say you're trying to decide what the office is going to have for lunch and you have a difference of opinion, is it really worth it taking hours and hours of discussion or polls and all that stuff just to decide between pizza and Chinese food or something? Or is it just something we're just going to make a decision and move on? So again, collaboration works well with very important, very long-term goals. Some other decisions they don't always have the need to go through the entire process to collaborate with it. Again, keep in mind, there's certain styles that we fall back on that we use the majority of the time. Maybe we're someone that likes to avoid conflict, and that's fine. That's the style that we use all the time. However, if it comes to a decision that's very important to us or something that's going to affect us, maybe we're going to move more to that competitive side or to that collaborative side because, we're not going to avoid that issue. We know it's an issue that has to be solved because it's finally, the day has come and it's finally affecting us. So we have to solve it no matter what. So again, keep in mind, even though there is a style that you tend to use that you tend to fall back on, maybe it reflects your, it's part of your personality or what have you. That doesn't mean that we use that 100% of the time. It's important to know these approaches and make sure we're taking the right approach because, making the wrong decision or mishandling conflict can have some very bad results, right? And, the immediate results that when we get into conflict or into a discussion or into an argument, of course, is we know that there's kind of like a physical or a biological response to it, right? Get an argument with somebody, you tempers get flared up, tempers get heated, and of course, you feel that blood start flowing. You kind of feel yourself getting worked up a little bit, right? It's not something that we do, that we do on purpose. That's something that we say, okay, I'm going to go next door and to the office next door, and I'm going to argue with Jessica. So before I go there, let me, get myself all worked up before I go there. Hopefully, you're not doing that, right? But it's something that happens where you're having a discussion, you're talking through something, having a disagreement, and these things just start to happen naturally. And that's, again, we're human. These reactions can happen, right? They catch us by surprise sometimes, right? And of course, once you get worked up, once, the other person sees that you're upset or maybe being more aggressive, they can respond and of course, that thing just kind of keeps escalating. And really, it's just doesn't have a positive effect on the outcome. And that's where having that emotional intelligence, right? Knowing how we feel internally, how we're reacting to things, being aware to that helps us to know, hey, you know what? I'm really, getting worked up about this right now, or I'm really emotional about this, or not thinking clearly. I'm going to take a step back and sort through this before we engage in the discussion or before we revisit it. So the thing to keep in mind is, when we're trying to solve those situations, we're trying to work our way through a conflict, is to always be communicating. What I call stay in dialogue, right? Keep the conversation flowing. So it's always, make sure that we always have that open line of communication because think about it, if you're in the conflict, in the discussion, you come across conflict at work and you stop talking to each other, you stop communicating, you just don't want to deal with this person anymore, the chances to solve that pretty much go down to zero because you're not talking, you're not working through it. You're basically like that, that difference, that conflict is still there. You're just not doing anything about it. So again, it's important to make sure that those lines of communication always stay open and that we're sharing information, but we're also open to receiving that information from the other person as well. So let's talk about crucial conversations and what a crucial conversation is. And this is something that we've all deal with in one way or another in our daily lives, whether it's with our family, our friends, or as professionals. It's something we deal with our reports if we're in the managerial position, with clients or customers, whatever it is with competition. There's always crucial conversations going on. And we define a crucial conversation as a conversation where the stakes are high for one or both parties, where there's a difference of opinion, and where there is the possibility for emotions to be elevated. So again, it's something that's important to us and important to the party. So it's going to we're going to be passionate about it, right? We're not it's not just a quick decision or something that's not going to affect us. So we're going to be emotionally involved with this. So before we engage in these crucial conversations, it's important to get in the right mindset for them, right? So before engaging with them, hopefully, we could think to ourselves, think to the end, what is the result that we're looking for? What is the purpose of this conversation? So we're going to ask ourselves, those four questions. What do I really want for myself? What do I want for others? What do I really want for the relationship? And how would I behave if I really, really wanted those results? So, think about those four questions. It's important to know, what do we want the end result to be? Are we just engaging in this because we feel like being argumentative today? Or is there a goal that we're really trying to achieve? And, again, use that emotional intelligence, use that empathy. What what does this result mean for the other party? What do I want for them? Do I want to crush them? Or do I want them to be content and be collaborative at the end of this? The other thing, think about the relationship. If this is a coworker or a report or a leader, you know, what what effect is this going to have, or could this discussion have for the relationship? Is this relationship important for me to maintain? So, for instance, if you're having a discussion with a coworker you're going to be collaborating with, on a long-term basis, that approach may be very different than if you're having a termination discussion with an employee that you're letting go, right? Because in one instance, that relationship is going to carry on. It's going to be collaborative, hopefully. You're looking to maintain it long term. In the other instance, that relationship is, for all intents and purposes, ending at that point. So your approach and the conversation itself can be very, very different. And again, think about your behavior compared to the results you're trying to achieve. So if the result you're trying to achieve is more cohesion for the team, a stronger team overall, does your behavior reflect that desire? Does the way you're treating or approaching the conversation reflect that? It's very important to keep in mind. And also, when I'm talking about our goals for a conversation, you know, it's important to know that when we're having a conversation or dealing with a conflict, our goal is to come up with a solution, find the facts, find the truth, that sort of thing, right? Produce our results, or make sure that, we have a positive outcome in those ways. So if our focus going into a conversation or dealing with a conflict is just to make ourselves look good, or to always win, or to, make sure that we're not blamed for it, that's what we consider an unhealthy goal, right? And just dealing with those conversations or those issues and with those goals in mind all the time is going to really affect your relationship with your coworkers or with your employees or with other people. They're going to look at you as someone that's just always, looking to pin the blame on somebody else, or always just trying to look good and doesn't care about the results overall. So those unhealthy goals are really going to sabotage your the whole process. So it's important, again, if this relationship's important to us and we want to maintain it, to find what our mutual purpose in is, right? And that's where that empathy comes into mind. We're putting ourselves in their shoes and looking to see, how they why they feel a certain way about things and what their end goal is. What is the result that they are trying to achieve, right? Again, you may not agree with it, but understanding why they feel that way can help you to solve the problem itself. So in other words, if someone comes to you and you just, whatever they're looking for, it just cannot be done, but understanding why they want that or why they're trying to get that result can maybe help you come up with other options that can be almost or equally as satisfying for them, or can satisfy those needs in a different way. Now we're having these discussions, of course. It's also very important to see where our focus is when we're dealing with the other person. I won't call them our adversary, but maybe the other person in the conversation or the other person in the conflict. And it's important to focus on them, on their behavior, but not their personality, right? So it's very important. This is something we try to really remind supervisors, managers, company owners about is when you're dealing with an employee, with an undesired behavior or undesired actions, it's important to focus on people's behaviors, not on their personality, because ultimately behaviors you can modify. You can change what people are doing, but personalities, a lot of the times, those are ingrained. That's who that person is. You're not going to change somebody's personality. So again, when you're making statements, even when you're giving feedback, even if it's positive feedback, it's important to focus that feedback on people's behaviors, not on their personality. So for instance, we see this example. If you tell someone you are a nice person, that's a nice thing to say. We'd say, well, there's nothing wrong with that comment, right? And you're right, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's very general. You're making a comment on their personality. And if you want to talk about somebody's personality, that's fine. But if you're trying to make that comment to enforce what they're doing or to reinforce it or make sure they keep doing it, you're going to focus on a specific behavior that they did. So for instance, in this case, instead of saying someone's a nice person, you say, hey, you know what? You make a point of saying good morning or hello to everybody every day. You talk to everybody in the office. I really appreciate that. Good job. That's giving a specific behavior that you focused on, and it's reinforcing them to keep doing it. On the flip side of that, if we're discussing something negative or something that we want someone to correct, you know, you could tell them, hey, I notice that you don't always put away your materials at the end of the day, or hey, I notice that, you leave all your tools laying around, or you don't always ask customers for all the information that we need. That's very specific, and that's something they can correct. But if you come up to someone and say, hey, you know what? You're being lazy. You're not doing your job. Very general, and really it's an attack on their personality. And there's more of a chance of having a negative reaction to that when you use that kind of statement. So it's important for us, when we have these discussions, not just to make sure we take the right approach, but also to make sure that we're what we consider a safe person in those crucial conversations. So in other words, are you using your emotional intelligence to make sure that you're aware of what your emotions are and how you're coming across in that situation? A lot of us we like to think that we're coming across as very calm, very level-headed, but sometimes our physical appearance, our bodies, our physical actions betray us, right? Sometimes what do people say? Sometimes our face talks in braille. We're saying one thing, but we're just, our face is just showing something different. And there's been studies that show that our physical language just sometimes delivers 70 to 80% of the message that we're talking about. So it's not just our voice, it's not just what we're saying, it's how we present ourselves, right? So again, are we there for that conversation? Are we being present? Are we listening to the other person? Are we actively listening to them, right? And what's our demeanor during that conversation, Are we showing attention to them, or do we look like we don't want to be there? You know, are we looking during that discussion? Are we being optimistic? Are we acting and looking like we want to come up with a solution or resolution? Are we just kind of looking like it's a waste of time, or we don't want to be there? We'd rather be somewhere else. So again, it's important we're having those conversations. If you're going to be someone that's considered a safe person, you're going to listen, withhold our opinions until it's time to share them, whether it's something that's asked for them or anything. And, if you get to a situation where maybe you're at a standstill, you get to a situation where things are getting a little worked up, just remember that, hey, sometimes it's okay to walk away for that for now and revisit it shortly after when everyone gets more level-headed and can deal with it in a better way. So a tool you can use when you're dealing with conflict as well is what we call the state model. And this is very important to, this is a very good tool to have if you're going to deal with a conflict, either with coworker or at whatever it is, right? And state refers to sharing your facts. So again, remember a discussion, conflict resolution. Our goal is to get to the truth. So we're going to state our facts, tell our story. You know, Once we share the facts, share, what conclusions we've come to or why we feel about it the same the way that we do that sort of thing. We're going to ask for the pats of others, right? What, what ideas do they have? What are their solutions? How do they think we can get to where we want to be? Um, as far as when we're having that conversation, of course, we're going to talk tentatively and with care. What that means is, we're not being, you know, very shy about it. It just means that we're being very careful as to how we do it. We're not being aggressive. We're not accusing people. We're just stating the facts and being very deliberate about that. And finally, encouraging testing. What that means is, let's talk things through. If we go that route, what could possibly happen, right? Open it up to different ideas, to different solutions. Don't just, again, that my way or the highway works in some situations, but overall it can lead to very, very bad, bad results. So one thing that we do have, I mean, you know, I think a lot of us has gone through is we've all had maybe coworkers or employees or someone that seems like they always have something negative to say in the meeting, right? So, and that could be, either something said or just their body language. And this example we have here is we have somebody that, you know, just always has a negative attitude in the group. They roll their eyes, they have a tendency to interrupt out others, and it just kind of makes the meetings or the situation feel very awkward, very uncomfortable. And there's different ways to deal with this, right? And I mean, we could talk about this, or thing is, different suggestion for dealing with this is maybe, we're going to pull Jason aside in this case and talk to him. Hey, we noticed that you are behaving a certain way. We're not telling him, hey, Jason, you're being a jerk. We're going to tell him, hey, Jason, we noticed that during the meetings, you seem disinterested, or you roll your eyes when people make suggestions. What's going on? Is there a specific thing that you're disagreeing with? You know, what, do you have any suggestions? What can we talk about here? We also want you to know that your physical, your body language, your reaction is very insulting towards your coworkers, right? It's making them very uncomfortable. So, you know, we want to come up with a more productive way of you expressing these things other than just rolling your eyes or, having those negative reactions. So again, we for that situation we focus on people's behaviors, right? We don't tell them, hey, Jason, you're being a jerk. Don't be so negative. We're telling them, hey, Jason, we notice, hey, you're rolling your eyes, you're interrupting people, et cetera, et cetera. We need to deal with this in a more productive way. So some tips for you for, coming to those crucial conversations. It's very important to make sure our language is simple, clear, direct, and neutral. Again, we're not blaming others, we're not name calling, we're not finger pointing, and as much as possible, keep in mind if you start a sentence with the word you, a lot of people are going to jump in the defensive, right? If we say, hey, you're always being negative, you are always doing this, you're always doing that, as soon as that word you leaves your mouth, people are going to get defensive. So avoid starting sentences with you as much as possible. Never apologize for having that conversation. You've gotten to that position. You don't start a conversation with "I'm sorry we have to do this" or "Gosh, I really hate to do this," because at that point you're already putting yourselves on your heels. That conversation had to happen. Approach it that way. It's crucial. It needs to happen. Um, Try to be collaborative or as collaborative as possible during the conversation. The example we give is say "and," not "but." If we say "and," we should do this and that, it signals that you're looking to collaborate, right? It signals that you're open to combining things. But, if you say but when somebody has an idea, oh, that's a great idea, but it seems like you're always shooting other people's things down. And, people just are going to stop suggesting things or taking part in it if you keep shooting down their ideas. And of course, you know, make sure that we're always preparing for those crucial conversations to deal with those conflicts. To help with that too, we have a little a checklist for you too, a pre-conversation checklist you can use. Of course, the first thing to do is, where's your head at that point? Are you emotionally and mentally ready to have that conversation? If not, do you need to take a walk? Do you need to vent about the situation with somebody just to make sure that you don't emotionally unload in the middle of that conversation? Because that, of course, can just lead to a shouting match or any other kind of negative situation there. We're going to plan our message too. Again, what what is the purpose of the discussion? What message are we trying to convey? And be prepared for multiple scenarios, right? Don't freeze up. Don't think, spend 2 hours or 2 days, thinking about the ways things can go wrong, but just be prepared that, there could be some resistance to what we're trying to say or difference of opinions. Just be prepared for that. And ultimately, the logistics of the conversation. What's the right place and time for it? If we're dealing with a corrective action issue, an employee breaking a policy or that sort of thing, we're not going to have that discussion in the lunchroom in front of everybody else, right? It's going to be maybe towards the end of the shift in an office, some privacy away from the rest of the workforce to make sure that there's no misinterpretations of it, to make sure that you're not, rallying people up unnecessarily or that sort of thing. So again, we're going to prepare mentally, strategically, and think about the logistics of the meeting itself. All right. Now to bring it all together for you. So again, when dealing with conflict and preparing for those crucial conversations, we're going to assess the conflict. Where did it come from? Where did it arise from? What are we looking to accomplish at that point? Prepare for that crucial conversation and make sure that our goal is to have a productive conversation. We want some kind of end result for that, whether it's the correction of an issue or the resolution of a problem there. And keep in mind, if we manage those conflicts successfully, it's going to help the organization as a whole. You have more engagement, more productivity, and more innovation, as opposed to mishandling those conflicts or just always saying, it's my way or the highway, or just kicking down the road. That's the kind of thing that leads to those toxic, unhappy workplaces. So with that, I hope you got some good information out of this and that can help you with some discussion or deal with some conflict in the workplace going forward. I would like to remind you of the hotline numbers for the Central Valley. So if you have any questions about the presentation, any questions about any HR issues or that sort of thing, give us a call, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We'd love to hear from you. Even if you just want to call and, vent about something or discuss something, we're here for you. If you're interested too, we also have memberships for CEA. If you're not already a member, there's other benefits that come with our membership. We have everything ranging from our ultimate membership to monthly associate memberships, and that includes things like toolkits, you know, all kinds of great deals. So take a look. If you're interested, you give us a call. We can talk about it, see if it's for you. I also want to bring up the Employer Summit coming up. We have joined forces with the Nevada Employers organization over there, and we are going to have a joint summit on October 4th in beautiful Lake Tahoe. So take a look at that. We're going to talk about some of the important things to know if you're an employer in California, also if you're an employer in Nevada, it's neighboring states, so it's important to know what's going on there, especially if you're an organization that does business in both places. So mark your calendars, October 4th. We'd love for you to be there. You could scan that QR code to register or for more information. And I also mentioned a survey, so I'd like to give you that slide as well. Just scan that QR code and let us know what you think, what you thought about the presentation, what you'd like to hear about in the future. If you have any ideas for other presentations or other topics, let us know. And for those of you that are here for continuing education, I do have some HRCI and SHRM codes for you. For HRCI, it's 676493. And for SHRM, it's 24-QFMRU. And if you're with SHRM and you've heard this before, whatever you do not forget that dash or they will be unhappy. Not saying they'll knock on your door, but they will be unhappy. So let me go back to the feedback slide as well. And I'll turn it over to you, Anna, to bring us home.
You covered everything. Yeah, that was it. I did put the link to the next training in the chat. If you scroll up just a few messages, you'll see the training coming up September 25th. It is ChatGPT in the workplace. It is a really good training and very, very eye-opening and fun. It's a very engaging training. So we really encourage you to take advantage of these free webinars sponsored by the Central Valley Regional HR Hotline. So we want to thank them again for sponsoring and bringing you all here live. Thank you all for joining live and being so engaging. I see such a good feedback in the chat. I'm so excited. If you do have that feedback and you have an extra minute, we really encourage you to snap that QR code or follow that hyperlink that I put there and really allow us to hopefully continue to exceed your expectations here with trainings like this. Thank you, Eli, for sharing your time, and Jessica, both of you for sharing your expertise today, and we look forward to seeing you all on September 25th for the next training. Thank you all. Cheers.